And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, the man that still has Washington in his top five, Joe DeLeone. Good evening. Good sir.
You just had to bring that up. You just had to bring that up off the top. Look, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it.
I can't believe that you, of all people, a team that doesn't score an offensive touchdown, you don't move them at all.
Look, I thought about it, and I will provide my explanation later. I have to give them credit for having one of the best, if not the best, win of the season. And also,
it's not even in the top four.
Them beating Oregon?
Yeah, it's not in the top four in my opinion.
Who would you put over them?
Florida, I'd put Ohio State over Notre Dame or Ohio State over Penn State. Pick one.
Okay, that's fine.
Florida State over LSU. Okay, because I still think Oregon can have – look, Oregon went to Texas Tech and almost choked. I said Texas over Alabama, and then Alabama – I don't know, maybe –
Oklahoma over Texas. The ones I will
Texas.
The ones I'll concede are Oklahoma over – actually –
Oklahoma, Texas over Alabama because it's –
I think Oregon – the thing is, though, is I think that Oregon is better than most of those teams.
Oregon's not better than Texas.
I think that they are. Oregon
then why didn't you put them above them in your rankings?
Did I not?
No.
Wait, no, I'm pretty sure that I did. Wait.
Well, just pull it up. You can pull it up right now.
Okay.
You just pull it up.
I have Oregon ahead of Texas. I knew it. You're trying to pump fake me. You're trying to pump fake me over here.
Yes, Benjamin. Okay, thank you. Love you. Ben wants to know if he can come in here and ask you a question.
Yes, of course.
All right, hold on.
I'm surprised we've made it this long into the season without Ben joining the show. He used to join the show every single time we used to do this on Saturdays.
Come here.
He was the best guest picker that we had on Saturdays.
Who did? All right, don't say that, okay? We'll talk about that later. All right, well, you got to ask Mr. Joe. No, look. If you're here, you better say something. Say hi to Mr. Joe. All right. In here, then. All right, we do.
Too bright. Lights got too bright.
Well, so he just said it, so I don't know if my wife's family got in a car accident today, and he was coming in here to tell me. He goes, "Daddy, I just wanted to let you know." So, anyway, we do got a lot we have to discuss. Joe, the largest cocktail party is this weekend, Florida and Georgia.
Is that what they call it? Is that like a thing that they call Florida, Georgia, the largest cocktail party? I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's called the largest cocktail party.
Why? Is it just because it's supposed to be a bloodbath? Because Georgia's just going to go out there?
I don't know. Google's your friend. I have no idea why they call it that. I'm just going to be honest. No idea. But here's what I do know. That might be a little bit closer of a game than people expect.
I'm curious to preview that one. I think that that's going to be a really fun discussion to have. There is an argument to be had for Florida making it close, but I think the way that Kentucky, that game went, is a little bit more of an accurate precursor for how this Florida-Georgia game will.
It's funny you say that because the SEC is funny like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm old enough to remember when Texas A&M held Alabama to under 50 rushing yards, and then the following week, Tennessee put over 230 on them. So we'll see. Teams are allowed to get better. I do think that game could be early or close early. Mm-hmm. The absence of Brock Bowers, but I do agree. I think Georgia's about to roll. I think they're pissed off.
Well, the biggest thing here, and I'm going to bring this up when we do that preview, but to catch Georgia when they're surging, that is the worst time to hit it. That Kentucky game was the start of their wake up. Their preseason was all the games leading up to the Kentucky game, and they're about to hit their stride. You don't want to be caught in the crossfire of that.
Now I'm having to field questions because family members watch this show. Nevertheless, I do agree with you somewhat. I do think Georgia's surging. Here's another thing. We've talked about this, and we have not been able to talk about him because Georgia hasn't had a lot of high-profile games. Carson Beck. Man, Carson Beck's having a really good year, okay? Yep. Considering a lot of heat that he took early, why he was taking heat, I don't know. Graham Mertz is actually, Joe, I'm going to talk about this when we preview it. I'm going to make you pick which quarterback is which, and I don't know if you're going to know.
Oh, no. I hate when you do this to me. I hate when you set me up with stats that just – because the numbers always don't fully tell the story, which is why I don't always love doing that. But it's a fun, it's a fun game to play because we talk highly of one guy and we talk pretty negatively of the other. There's a reason for that, but I'm sure that their numbers are pretty similar.
If you go by the blind stats, you would probably not pick the one that you're thinking. Also,
yeah,
Utah and Oregon teed up this
game
weekend.
Day.
Oregon Utah coming off a big win and beating USC. And Oregon, kind of getting back to their winning ways. A lot of teams still think that they're really good. I think Oregon's going to continue to roll here. I still am not a believer of Utah. I'm going to continue to not be a believer of Utah.
The thing that scares the hell out of me is the fact that this game is at Utah. If this was at Oregon, the conversation would be completely different. But even whenever Utah is in a situation where they're likely they're not favored, they're likely not going to win, them being able to host a game is this strange abyss that teams don't know how to get in and out of. And when Utah's competitive, even with all their injuries and whatnot, they still find a way to drag teams down to their level when they're playing at home. So that's why I have a little bit of pause.
Utah's still very bad defensively. Offensively. I am not taking anything away from that USC for them offensively. I'm not going to do it.
That's fair. It's fair. It's a fair thing to do.
And we'll talk about it in our top 10 because you have Utah in your top 10, which I absolutely loathe.
Damn right I do. Because you know what? If we're going to prop up a team that has a bad offense and a really good defense, I'd rather do it with the one that has the better resume. I'm talking about Utah and Alabama. One has a better. They've got multiple wins over top 25 teams. Their only losses to a top 25 team.
So is Bama.
Alabama's
losses to a top 6 team.
This all comes down to us having a disagreement and a lack of a connection here on how we value Tennessee.
Well, you know what? As of today, since Aaron Nola is pitching for your Phillies and he's dominating so far, I think you're just going to losing. True. But I do think you're going to have to concede because if we gift wrapped you Aaron Nola. You're welcome.
Yeah, Brian, we'll say thank you for that.
All right, we got a lot to discuss. We got a lot to get into. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those social media groups, share to all those social media pages. If you're listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, and notification bell. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're watching us on Fubo TV, welcome. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Don't go anywhere. We preview these games. Week 9 upon us. Next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. But their starting quarterback isn't.
Oof.
Out 4 to 6 weeks is Quinn Ewers. Did you see Steve Sarkisian's comments today that he is not getting Malik Murphy the nod yet? He said him and Arch are going to battle it out to see who starts this weekend.
Well, I think that's justified. I even almost tweeted it out that it's tough.
He is not ready.
He's probably not. They're playing BYU and Kansas State, which should be beatable opponents, but are total absolute trap games. They're total games that if you're underprepared and a guy plays like crap at quarterback, you might end up losing those games. But if he looks ready in practice, get him the reps. You don't lose the red shirt if he plays those 2 games. I would at least throw him out there for some series.
He could be out for 4 games.
Still, you don't lose the red shirt. I would get him in the mix in some series, I think. I think that should be the goal.
Well, if he's playing in 4 games, Joe, that normally means that he's doing pretty well and they're winning. And at that point, does Quinn Ewers get his job back?
Well, they're not. I don't. They're playing a weak stretch of their schedule. I don't think they couldn't.
Kansas State can beat them with their new resurgence. Kansas State can beat them with Avery Johnson.
Well, what I'm saying though is that if Arch or Malik Murphy take over, I don't think that Quinn Ewers is in jeopardy of losing his job.
Tom Brady says hi.
They're none of those guys are Tom Brady.
No, but everybody's making Arch Manning the next Peyton. So if he is,
that's true.
I mean, if you want, everybody's talking about the number 1 overall player in the country. There's your shit. He ain't ready. I don't
think he's ready. I think you might. I
don't think he's ready either. Florida and Georgia this weekend, the largest cocktail party down in Jacksonville. Georgia, the 2-time reigning, defending national champions, take on the Florida Gators, who, Joe, I will be first to admit where I'm wrong. I did not think this team would be as good as they were. I do like Austin Armstrong. We've talked about this, and I think the connection's already been made. I like Austin a lot, known him for a long time. I think he's a bright defensive guy. I think it's why he got hired at Alabama, and then Billy Napier's not a dummy. He says, look, this is an emerging star, and he's a linebackers coach. We can make him our coordinator. And then he goes over to Florida. But, Joe, I got to admit something, and I got to ask you this question. I told you I was going to give you a blind resume quarterback test. Name which quarterback is which. One is completing 76% of his passes, 1,897 yards, 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Now, you're Googling. I can see you typing. No. I literally can see you typing.
My hands are up. I haven't
Googled other anything. Quarterback number 2, 74% completion percentage, 2,147 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Which quarterback is which?
Carson Beck's the second one.
Shit. How did you know?
Well, no, you set it up too much. You said that it was going to be shocking. The one that I thought that Carson Beck wasn't going to be him. No, I mean it doesn't surprise me. He had a couple of shaky, I wouldn't say games. He had a couple of shaky series early on in the season. He's
still completing 74% of his passes.
Yeah.
It's not like he's been bad. He's in top 10 in passing yards. He's got 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But I got to come on here and say this. The only way for me that Georgia can get beaten this game, Graham Mertz has to go off like he's done a couple of times this year, and which he has. He has multiple games of 350 yards plus. He had a 400-yard game. He's the only reason that they were in the game versus Utah. I don't think that matters, because when I look at this game, I do think because it's a rivalry game, unexplained X's and O's will make this game close early. Okay? Just how rivalry games work, man.
Yeah.
Both teams are excited, juiced up. No matter, it can be close. I think, if Florida has a good 15 plays scripted up, maybe they can go down there and score in the opening drive. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Because the best thing, I don't want to say the best thing, but in a way, the Brock Bowers news, to me, gets Kirby to this offense and says, we got to dial in. To the defense, we got to dial in. Brock isn't here anymore. I think they go out to Jacksonville this weekend. I think that they dominate, and everybody's like, Oh shit, here comes Georgia. I don't want to say that there's no chance that Florida can win this game. I don't want to go there because I do think that they have good personnel defensively that can, and Armstrong sends enough pressure at Carson Beck that maybe he can get to him early. Who knows how that works out? I just cannot envision Georgia losing this one. I can't see it. I don't know where. Joe, I don't know anything that Florida does good enough offensively that Georgia can't stop. They're not going to run the ball against Georgia that effectively to win. I just can't see that.
Well, look, here's the reality of it. Yes, Georgia is hitting their stride. They're without Brock Bowers, but they're starting to hit that stride that we saw them flip the switch last year, and they just bullied their way through the rest of their schedule. They had a couple duds at the beginning of the season, and they just exploded, dominating defensively everybody that they played. Offense showed up when they needed them to. But the one thing, to your point, I think Auburn has illustrated to us that there is a possible formula to keep this game close. And if you keep a game close in the SEC, there's ways to pull out of it. I would actually be a little bit more specific than what you said about Graham Mertz. Yes, his performance is very important for their success. The rushing game has to be on point. Montreal Johnson, Trevor Etienne need to have really good games. But what we saw Peyton Thorne do, who's not exactly the most exhilarating rusher, he was an extension of the running game because it was unexpected. And Graham Mertz, we know, is a deceptively good athlete. They need to look at what Auburn did with Peyton Thorne and get Georgia to sell out to stop the run with either of those backs, and then have a complete misdirection with Graham Mertz from time to time on these drives. That stuff, for whatever reason, Georgia struggled to stop.
You don't think Kirby's been banging that home for 2 weeks that he's coming off a bye week?
I bet he has, and I know that Kirby is smart enough to be prepared for that, but that's literally the only thing. Here's my whole point here. That's literally the only thing that Florida can have that will help them keep this game close.
Graham Mertz has got to be Superman. And look, Joe, I know that you crapped on him more than I did. You did not like Graham Mertz. I was kind of a little bit more lenient on the guy because, I mean, look, I thought Wisconsin was a dumpster fire offensively.
He's just very mid. You know, he doesn't do anything exciting.
I don't think he's mid anymore. I think he's above average. You can't have multiple games, Joe. Look, we're talking about Power 5 opponents. Okay, Power 5 opponents. He's throwing for over 350 yards. Mid quarterbacks don't do that. Mid quarterbacks. Joe Milton is a mid. Right? Like you would say Joe Milton is a mid-average quarterback. I think Graham Mertz has played above that. I think he's been better than that. And I see Elks' comment, and it's a point that I actually wrote down and wanted to bring up. Everybody keeps saying, well, Auburn, without Brock Bowers, they would have lost to Auburn. Okay. You're not wrong. I don't disagree with that. But I'm going to use Elks' analogy. With 11 people on the field, are you sure Ohio State wins against Notre Dame on the road? Good teams, Joe. You said on Sunday, find ways to win. Now, that I know that I could say that because Elks knows I'm not like taking a shot at him. So that way I'm not in the comments. But I do agree with him. There is a flip side of that coin. Florida is a better team. So to Elks' point, Florida is a better team than Auburn is. And if Auburn can have success offensively, that chaotic of an offense, we saw LSU's defense stop Auburn. Okay, so it's not like there's been teams that defensively have been really bad have also stopped Auburn.
Yeah,
I just think that Kirby starts getting this thing rolling, and I think that they get the running game going early. They start pounding the rock on Florida, and eventually they're going to lean on them. I think that this game could be 34-21, somewhere around there. That's where I lean. That's where I'm.
Yeah, I don't mean to deliberately make this conversation less about Georgia, but I mean, to your point about Auburn and Florida, Florida's roster's better, but I think that Auburn's better coached. So
I agree with that. I agree with that.
To what you're talking about there.
Well, specifically offensively.
Yes, that game was close because Hugh Freeze is a really good offensive coach. We can be critical if we want. Auburn fans are already saying the honeymoon phase is over, which is absolutely hilarious that that's the reaction to the first season with a bad roster. But I think, as you're saying here, what we saw against Kentucky is how this game is going to play out. It is going to be a boat race. It is going to be a blowout. I wouldn't be shocked that maybe this game's a little close in the first quarter. They're feeling each other out. And then we see a big rushing play break off. We see a big passing play. The thing that does scare me, though, is the fact that no wide receiver on Georgia's offense has over 400 receiving yards. And there's 6-7 games into the season or so.
What, you said Florida?
Georgia.
Oh, I thought you said Florida. I was like, Ricky Pearsall says hello. The White Hope. He's the new Ladd McConkey. Hey, we could have a white boy wide receiver battle. Ladd McConkey versus Ricky Pearsall.
They need McConkey back. I don't know how physically what his situation is. I know that he's been returning to the lineup, but being banged up is being banged up, and it's tough to play the receiver position banged up. What I'm getting at here, though, is that they got to use this game as that opportunity to start to find that rhythm as a passing team, because they haven't done it all season. And without Brock Bowers, you're going to need to figure out how to do that for the next few weeks.
The problem, and you brought this up pre-show, that I thought was probably one of your best comments that you've had in the last 2 weeks. If Kentucky can run the ball like that, it was your best comments. I mean, I'm just being honest.
I mean, not my predictions for the
you said
Utah
Kentucky
game, the Penn State, Ohio State game.
You can't use your picks. You can't use your picks when you're losing. You talked about how Kentucky ran the ball on Florida.
Mm-hmm.
What in the good gracious alive do you think that Georgia can and has the potential to do? That I think that's my whole point. The only thing more than them offensively, okay, Florida, I'm at. Now let's talk about Florida a little bit. Florida, to me, I just don't know if they have the dudes defensively. I don't know if they have the guys. I don't know if they have the dudes. I know that they have a pretty decent, pretty good front seven. They've shown that they can be good. I mean, Kentucky game, they didn't really show anything. Joe, I look at this one and just don't envision anything other than a 34-21 win. I can't stop seeing 34-21 in my head.
Yeah, Princely Uman is probably their best defensive player. And
10 times fast. Hocus Pocus is coming.
I had to do so much research to figure out how to pronounce his name right. I did do the due diligence to figure out how to pronounce it. But Uman, fine football player. Probably will get drafted in this upcoming draft. But the rest of the grouping, it's relatively uninspiring. It's a group that's still trying to really solidify its identity. As you've talked about, we get games where they feel dominant, like the way that they played against Tennessee, and then they get completely dog walked like they played against Kentucky. I just think that lack of consistency is noticeable for this Florida defense, and it's just another reason why you're going up against the best team in the country and why you're just another speed bump on their way for them reaching the finish line.
To get the three-peat.
Yeah.
One thing that I do want to mention, okay, we went overlooked because Florida played South Carolina. I know South Carolina is really bad, okay, but stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
Billy had not won a game on the road at Florida, and he changed everything up. He goes, I'm changing everything up. We're making sure the guys are in their rooms, locked in. We got to change things up. And I do think anytime a team goes on the road and they haven't gotten over the hump of winning, and then you change things up and they do, maybe Billy has found a little something, okay? Maybe this team isn't as bad as we thought. But, again, Graham Mertz has been, to me, and I'm just being honest, the surprise that nobody's talking about. Because for what it was, Joe, when he went to Florida, what did we all say? He's horrible. He's not any good. And I think that he, quite frankly, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, but this is what I talk about with guys. Please stay with me. Don't yell at me. Guys like Stetson Bennett, who are good college quarterbacks, right? Just good college quarterbacks, whatever. But better prospects, Anthony Richardson. Graham Mertz is kicking his ass when it comes to what he's done for this team so far statistically.
When I'm talking about earlier, and I'm calling him mid, and my reasoning for that, and there's other guys that I'd put into that category that are maybe slightly ahead of him that would cause some controversy and has caused some disagreement on this program. I think that with Graham Mertz, the difference between you bring up a guy like Stetson Bennett, I at least can give credit to Stetson Bennett for when he needs to step up and make plays when other parts of the offense aren't working. He was able to step up and do that. My problem with Graham Mertz is that he is a physically gifted guy and he is a capable quarterback. He was a 4-star recruit. He is a fine football player, and he's put out some
5-star recruit.
I think he was a really high 4-star. He was like one of the highest Wisconsin quarterbacks ever signed. He is one of those guys, kind of like Tyler Van Dyke. When everything goes according to plan, he'll play a really good football game. But when things aren't spelled out in front of him, he plays like shit. And that's what happened against Kentucky. He is not somebody who on a week-to-week basis I can count on being a factor in leading your team to a victory. And this is going to be another one of those games where we see him. He's going to struggle. He's going to struggle in this game. There are so many monsters on that defense for Georgia. And you know what? That conversation that we're having about him right now is probably going to be solved pretty quickly. And I'm sure he's going to have good games the rest of the year. I just don't see a guy that ascends when asked to and put up to the task of playing at an elite level. He just hasn't done it yet.
But see, here's the problem with what you're saying. You went from saying that talking about elite level to he's being mid. Nobody's saying that he's at that elite level. But here's what I do know. Here's what I do know. South Carolina, who offensively has been horrendous, that Florida team gave up 39 points. And it's a lot of reasons of why I think Georgia's going to go in there and smack that ass a little bit. But here's what I know. Graham Mertz in Florida was down in that game, right? And I look at what Graham Mertz did against South Carolina. Joe, he went, here it is, 30 of 48, 423 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also, it doesn't show up in the stat sheet, had 6 rushes for -7 yards. 4 of those rushes, he got outside of the pocket and scrambled. If you need him to throw, you can go back to Utah. Okay, he's bailed his team out twice, meaning one of them in a loss against Utah. I think he still bailed them out from he gave them a shot in the 3rd and 4th quarter, and he had I saw this stat today when I had Zach pull up some stats. Did you know that they're like 2nd in the country in drop passes? Meaning
Florida is
in Florida.
Not
only, Joe, is he throwing for 76% completion percentage, he probably could be at 80% if his team wasn't 2nd in the country in drops. There's something to be said about a guy who, with an adjusted rate, is damn near an 80% completion percentage guy when he's got damn near 250 passes on the season. That is impressive. Regardless if you like him or not, that is impressive.
Yeah, it's statistically impressive, but when I watch him play, it's uninspired. Wait. Here's a really good example. When they won against Tennessee, what was the reason for them winning? It was Trevor Etienne. It was the run game. They exploded. They dominated. Their offense was because of the run game. And if he did anything statistically, it was because that was opened up for him by the run game. I just don't.
Joe, they threw the ball 3 times. They threw the ball 3 times in the second half. Billy Napier, or maybe I think it was 3 or 5. Billy Napier came out in his postgame press conference and said, "Yeah, I probably got a little too conservative." You think, Billy? Now,
would you agree that was Florida's best win of the season? That was the best game that they've played all year?
No. Well, offensively or just as a team?
As a team. That's the best game that they've played.
As a team,
their best game came down to him not being an important part of the offense.
I still believe because I can't do that when he went off against South Carolina the way he did and won this team the game. I saw Anthony Richardson in that same position a year ago, and he didn't make enough plays to win it. By the way,
you played like 20 more games than
Anthony Richardson. Stop.
He's hurt.
Anthony Richardson is going to be Rookie of the Year. I said, no, he's not.
He's hurt.
He's always been hurt. He was hurt 2 years ago. It's why you remember Emory Jones?
Emory Jones stinks.
He does stink. All right. One final thing. Joe, don't quote me on this. I saw Barrett Salih, I think is his name. If Georgia does what they do defensively, it will be the first time. Saban has not even done this. 52 straight playing weeks of being a top 5 defense.
Georgia, you're saying.
Georgia of playing.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. All right. Utah and why did I almost say USC? Oregon teed up this weekend. Utah clearly coming off a really good win against USC. Oregon bouncing back after that Washington loss. Bo Nix doing some Bo Nix type of things. They responded. Joe, I'm going to kick this one over to you first. I just don't know if I continue to trust Utah, even though I keep picking against them. They keep freaking winning.
That, I think, is the best way to phrase this. That I really think is the best way to phrase this, because Oregon, without a doubt, is one of the best teams in the country in terms of how well-rounded they've been, how dominant they've looked in some of their games. The way that they pulled away against Washington State, and I know that Washington State's struggling, that's still a quality football team. It's still a quality team that they pulled away from and dominated in the second half. They're running the ball really well with Bucky Irving. They're throwing the ball really well and starting to feel that out. And their defense has been one of the best in the country. Jordan Burch looks fantastic. The secondary is kind of still getting a feel for things. But that team is incredibly well-rounded. And if it wasn't for that loss to Washington, we would absolutely be talking about them in that top 3, top 4 discussion. But where I have pause, and I said this in the open, Utah has one of the best current active winning streaks at home. For whatever reason, that stadium,
it's spooky. It's spooky.
And it's not even a big stadium.
I agree.
It, for whatever reason, forces teams just to play down to the stupidest level possible. And nobody can figure out a way to bypass that. Now, I still think that Oregon wins, but I think this game is going to be like a three-point game. I think it's going to be really freaking close for that exact reason, that it is impossible to win at home or to beat Utah when they're at home.
You pretty much took my take, okay, of why I think I can't explain what they do to teams while they're at home. Maybe it's the elevation. Maybe teams aren't used to playing at that high of elevation. It gets to them. I do not know. Here's what I do know, though. I'm still not buying Utah offensively. Cam Rising, it was announced, is not going to be he's not going to play this year. So they're going to have to go with Bryson Barnes mainly. USC is a horrible defensive team. I'm tired of talking about USC. If you want to listen to me and Joe's segment about that, go listen to it on last night's show. But I think Oregon is going to suffocate them defensively. Mm-hmm. Oregon is going to suck the life out of them. Pause. And it's not going to be pretty. I do think, okay, I'm with you. I think this game is closer than maybe some people would believe. Just normal casual saying, yeah, Oregon's going to beat Utah pretty handily. I do think it's a 10, 14, 17-point game, but I feel like it's going to be more dominant than that. I think it's going to be more like you look up at the end of the game, you're like, damn, they only beat them. But kind of like Ohio State and Penn State, right? Like you just felt like the whole game.
Yeah.
Even though they only scored 20 points, you're like, man, Ohio State's going to eventually break through, and this is ball game. Penn State just can't score a touchdown. I think it's going to feel a lot like that. And I think that Oregon, Joe, they're still 100th in the country in total offense. They're not good offensively. Now, they have an amazing play caller, and I'll give Andy Ludwig that. I think he's working with some really bad offensive pieces at quarterback. One can run really well and can't throw. The other one is a decent thrower, but he can be a statue. And still USC gave up a 20-yard run to him for them to kick the field goal to win it.
The pig farmer.
I just think that Oregon is vastly the better team here. but I don't think they're the better coach team. I think Kyle Whittingham is by far the best coach in the Pac-12 right now. Okay, because of his resume. If Utah does have a chance of winning this, it's because Dan Lanning makes some more boneheaded decisions like he's been doing. Joe, he made a couple last week. I'm like, what are you doing? Regardless, I do think that Kyle Whittingham and that stadium, it's like you might as well call them Georgia or Alabama because they don't lose to anybody. I think Oregon by 14. I see it. I see
really?
It. Yeah, wow. I see it. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the line is, but I think that this is less than a 7-point football game. This might be one of those games where, like you're talking about, it's not going to be a game where you really necessarily feel like it was close. It's going to be really low scoring. It's probably going to come down to like a 4th and medium stop for Utah on their final drive. And then Oregon's just going to run the clock out. Maybe
Oregon's got to start off fast, though, dude. Like to your point, where I think what you're trying, Oregon's got to get on the board quickly. Like even if, like what Dan Lanning did against Washington, Joe, and was going for it on 4th down, they got to kick the field goals. You just got to go down there.
They got to stop dicking around. Yeah, they got to stop dicking around.
If you're going to get points on this defense, you got to go. You got to get them right. Like if they score 13 points in the first quarter, that is a massive win. A massive win. You just got to go get points on every possession, regardless of what it looks like. And if they do that, they're gonna win because Utah can't match up with them blow for blow, stride for stride. They cannot do it.
Right. That's where this all comes down to. For Oregon to win this game by multiple scores and for it to feel comfortable, it requires Oregon to pick up a ton of splash plays, to have a couple long scores to build up a lead that Utah can't climb back into. But the reality of it, though, is that they're going up against a defense that just does not allow big plays. The most susceptible to them that we've seen them so far this year was against USC. And USC has far more athletes than Oregon does. Oregon's been the more cohesive unit.
Defensively.
No. I'm saying that USC's offense has all those weapons that they have. But my whole point, I think, that is also worth acknowledging. Who has Oregon been tested by defensively? They have not come anywhere close to facing a defense this good.
Oregon State. Oh, no, you said Oregon. My bad. I'm sorry.
Oregon. Yeah, Jonah Ellis, Cole Bishop, that group has been smothering opposing teams. Do you know Jonah Ellis is I believe, the leader in sacks in the country right now? He's a monster.
And he has like more pressures than like the other top 5 dudes combined or something like that. It's just something crazy, right? Joe, I don't think it matters. I mean, again, I've also seen Utah, by the way, face a UCLA team and only score us a touchdown. Are you really going to come out here and tell me that Oregon does not have that potential to lock them down offensively? Because then I look at Utah, again, against Oregon State, they only score 7. Okay, Baylor, all right, they score 20, but you get to a kind of a point where, Joe, the best defense that Utah maybe has seen is in Oregon. So,
no, I mean, I would argue that UCLA's defense and Oregon State's defense aren't that far off from Oregon's.
I just think Oregon's got more green grass athletes.
They do. Here's a take I have, a thought here. If Utah can score a special teams or a defensive touchdown, they can win the football game.
Yeah, if it gets like that, I can see that. That's not a bad point, but they're not going to.
You never know. Well, dude, one stupid mistake by Dan Lanning
or Bo Nix,
then Utah wins the football game. That's how you got to win. And they are the perfectly chaotic team, just spelled out by their home winning streak. They're the perfectly chaotic team to pull out a victory like that. But I agree with you.
Barstool's in the building. How about that?
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, who did? Knock
off Dave Portnoy. At one bite, everybody knows the rules. Hey, my man tried to come down to Baton Rouge and make peace.
No one wanted to acknowledge him.
No, they were mad about the Andrew Reese thing. You ready to get to these top 10s?
Yep. Yeah, I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
Talk about good friends over Home Field Apparel. Me and Joe argue and yell at each other incoherently for the next 20 minutes after we talk about our good friends over at Home Field.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan. Whatever it is, even Idaho, they have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code RuffinoJoe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
Our top 10. Who you want to go first? You want me to go first? How do you want to do this?
I'll go first. I'm not scared. All right, let's pull mine up here. My number 1 team, Georgia. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Florida State. Number 4, Ohio State. I'm trying to remember where I had them last week. I believe I pushed them up after their victory over Penn State. It was very impressive. Number 5, Washington. A lot of people are pissed at me for that. Number 6, especially you, Blake. Number 6, Oklahoma. Number 7, Oregon. Number 8, Texas. Number 9, Penn State. And number 10, Utah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and read mine because I'm about to attack you on yours. All right. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Florida State. Number 4, Ohio State. So, Joe, we'll probably get to this, but I was really close at flipping 3 and 4. I watched Florida State and Duke ran all over them when Riley Leonard was in there. I think it's the discussion throughout the season that we need to have. Oklahoma at number 5, Texas at number 6, Alabama at number 7, Washington, where they're rightly placed at number 8, number 9, Oregon, number 10, Penn State. Let's get this Washington thing out of the way. Let's try not to yell, and let's just get it over with. Joe, they didn't score an offensive touchdown last week. They did not score an offensive touchdown last week. And let me tell you how bad Arizona State is. You ready? Kyle Dillingham at the end of the game, did you see that viral clip on Twitter? Kyle Dillingham, literally in his post-game press conference, was begging for people at Arizona State. He said, if you're 6 foot, 350 pounds, and you think that you can block on field goal and extra point, please come try out. That's how they're scared of kicking the football. Okay. They are a horrible team without Jaden Rashada.
Yeah.
Horrible team.
Won't argue that.
And they could not score defense. They could not score. They got bailed out by their defense. Michael Penix looked like hot ass in the first and second half. He had 3 first-half turnovers. Jaden Daniels has never done that in his career. I am just saying, I don't care that it's Washington. I swear on everything in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. If a team cannot in the top 10 cannot score offensively, Joe, Utah had a better performance last week than they did. Utah, you cannot have games like that against arguably the worst team in the Pac-12. It can't happen.
Good teams are allowed to have bad games. I'm not sitting here saying that Washington is a top 2, top 3 team. A lot of people were going as far as to say that they're the number 1 team in the country after they beat Oregon. I thought that was a little too rich for my blood. I think that it was and this is something that is a very big misconception with football that people that didn't play in college don't understand. When you play a close game against a big rival like that,
They're not a rival.
Oregon is a pretty big rival for them.
Oh, I thought you meant Arizona State. Continue.
When you play a game like they did against Oregon, it is such an emotional dump after that game to barely win when you shouldn't have, that they show up against Arizona State completely looking past them and they played like shit. Yes, that is a bad performance. Their floor is really bad, but their ceiling to me has been displayed consistently enough against Oregon, against all the bad teams that they started the season against, they can still be one of the most offensively dominant teams in the country. They played a singular bad game. Other teams in the history of college football have had bad games to start their years. I mean, last year we had with Georgia when they played against Kent State.
Yeah, but Georgia was never on the pinnacle of people comparing them to 2019 LSU offensively, though, Joe.
Okay, but I didn't, and we're talking about where I ranked them. So I didn't rank them in the top two
but
like some people
said
did.
That they were a top 3 offense, and top 3 offenses don't do that.
They are also dealing with injuries, and that is something that has not been talked about.
Dealing with injuries.
Their second best wide receiver, who is going to be a top 50 NFL draft pick, was unavailable for this game, and they have other injuries on their roster. That has been completely overlooked. Everyone just wants to dunk on them because they think they've been unjustly propped up. They're still a very good football team. They're good enough to be the number 5 best team. And I think that their win over Oregon is one of the most impressive wins this entire season. And they can get through the rest of their schedule and win out.
They can't beat Bama.
Bama has a very good secondary. Wait. Bama has a very, let me get this point in. Bama has a very good secondary. I will concede that, but they don't have the bodies. They do not have the guys to keep up with all 3 of those receivers if they're healthy and on the field. They don't. And they don't have the offense that if Washington scores 2 touchdowns, I will get back and
I will concede that because Bama plays LSU in 2 weeks. So we're about to find out. Okay. We're legitimately about to find out. However, you can't do that. You can't be that bad offensively and me not drop you. When you don't show up, okay. And Joe, here's another thing. Okay, whoa, they played Oregon. And then they came back flat the next week. Joe, Alabama went on the road 2 straight weeks, played A&M in a highly contested match. Jimbo Fisher, what some believe was his job on the line, some people believe that, against Alabama. They wind up winning that game. They turn right around their biggest rival, not named Auburn, in Tennessee, and beat them. Bama has been faced with that exact same thing.
This is again where you and I disagree.
Let me ask you a question. Would you rather face Oregon and Arizona State, or would you rather face A&M and then Tennessee?
Obviously, actually, I'd rather face A&M than Tennessee. Oregon is so much bigger of a threat to play against compared to either of those teams.
Joe, Arizona State might be the Colorado of a year ago. They are dead last in every statistical category, damn near.
Are trap games just like not a thing? Like in the history of college football,
not teams. Joe, what if last year? Let me throw this your way. What if last year Colorado would have given a dogfight to USC?
They didn't.
Oh, I'm saying what if? What if they would have?
USC leading up to that point didn't have any challenges when they played.
Joe, Arizona State is one of the worst teams in the country. They could be potentially the worst team in Power 5 right now. Without Rashada, they are there.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that they're worst in Power 5.
Then who's the worst team in the Power 5?
Nevada. Nevada just won.
Nevada's not in Power 5.
Oh, in the Power 5. I thought you said in FBS. I don't know why. Power 5?
Name the worst team in the Power 5 not named Arizona State.
Northwestern.
Conceded. Okay, good pull.
Vanderbilt stinks too.
I don't think Vanderbilt's not worse. Vanderbilt is not worse than Arizona State. You know how I know? With a backup quarterback and A.J. Swan, or was it Swan or was it Spears? In Spears, they were, for 3 quarters against Missouri, a 7-1 football team, they were keeping up with them. Vandy can actually score. Vandy actually has a pulse.
Okay.
Fair. So I look at that and say, yeah, you got to play a very tough team in Oregon, conceded, followed by arguably one of the top 5 least how am I trying to word this, Joe? A top 5 worst Power 5 team in the country. You know for sure in that matchup you're going to get one game.
I just don't think it's totally fair when they have shown us what their ceiling is. It's my problem is, and what I'm getting at here, and why I don't like Alabama and why I'm not willing to put them in the top 10 is that I have seen Alabama's ceiling. Alabama's ceiling is the Tennessee game, and I have argued with you on this the entire year. I don't think Tennessee and Ole Miss are as good as that they have been ranked where they've been placed. Well, they're back end of the top 25 quality teams, and that's the furthest that they should be ranked.
Let me counter this point. Alabama lost at home against Texas. Okay?
Yeah.
That loss is better than the Washington win over Arizona State.
I don't disagree with that, and I will concede that Alabama's floor is higher than Washington's floor. But the ceiling for Washington when everybody's back on the field and they're back into their rhythm is so much higher than what Alabama can do. Alabama is a defense with an offense that's ready to implode. Yes, they have had a string of good games. Yes, they have. But I am still extremely wary, as I said on yesterday's show, that eventually the offensive line stuff is going to catch up to them in an important game. And I think that the LSU game is going to be one of them. Right.
I hope it is. Uh-oh.
What?
Oh, I thought you were. I thought you.
No,
I have to move them back. That doesn't mean that I don't think they're a good team. I can't. Joe, I walked away from it flabbergasted. That's a good white person word for you. Flabbergasted. All right. There's no way to me that I just had to. All right. I got to pick on you about one thing. You ready?
Utah.
Joe, again, if our top 10, if the core of it is who are the best top teams, I don't think Utah can beat LSU. I don't think Utah can beat Ole Miss. I don't think Utah can beat Bama. Now let's go to the Big Ten. I don't think Utah can beat. I'm going to be careful here. I really do question some teams in the Big Ten. Can Utah actually beat them?
Okay, I completely disagree with that.
All right, let me go to another conference. Okay. I think UNC can beat them. I think Miami can beat them. I think Clemson gives them one hell of a game. I would say that that's mutual. Okay, I really do believe that.
Okay.
On a neutral field, I think that there's maybe 5 teams in the ACC that beat them. I think there's 5 teams in the SEC that beat them. And quite honestly, I don't know if, Utah has a pretty tough stretch coming up here. This starts it all in Oregon. I don't know if they don't come away with 2 losses in this stretch.
Well, here's my thing with Utah. We've been saying this on a week-to-week basis. How many times have we counted out Utah? How many times have we talked about Utah and saying their offense is terrible and they somehow still find a way to win a football game? I don't think that there are very many teams so far this year that have shown me a more impressive resume than what they've put together.
But the eye test is telling you.
The eye test tells me that they have an elite defense. And I get that they have offensively struggled. But they have also faced some difficult defensive matchups throughout this stretch. Oregon State's defense isn't that bad. UCLA's defense isn't that bad. They have been butchered offensively. And I don't think that their offense is as bad as those statistics tell us. I think that they can be a little bit better than what we've seen in the early stretch of the season. If Bryson Barnes can play 3/4 of the way that he did against USC, that team is a lot better than they are on paper.
I can't go there because I think they're better teams than them. I think
they keep winning.
But so does Bama. Against better competition, whether you like it or not.
They're just so lopsided. I don't think it's that much better of competition, though.
No, it doesn't matter. You know what? They're lopsided. Your buddy Sean Anderson said something. I was listening to y'all's show today. Don't tell him I said it. And yes, I actually do listen to you. Sean said something so profound that he said the point that I was trying to make yesterday. Remember when I was like, I believe that we have been enamored by so much offense, and he was talking about how even in the NFL, offense is down, right? Yeah. Okay. Joe, we're not enamored by what Bama's doing defensively because we're so worried about what they're doing offensively. Were they bad to start the year? Okay, yeah, but teams are allowed to get better. And what I just saw from Tennessee, and quite honestly, A&M, everybody's talking about Milroe. Milroe only had 50 yards of rushing against A&M and still found ways to win. And A&M blows Arizona State out of the water. Blows them out of the water. And you know that. Okay? Teams in the Pac-12, it's not the same. Everybody wants to throw the Arkansas thing at me. Arkansas, for what it's worth to me, is still a more physical and better team than some teams that they're going to face.
I think that you're heavily discounting the quality of an opponent that Oregon State and UCLA are. I personally think that UCLA, they still kept that game extremely close. I think that UCLA and Oregon State are better than Tennessee and Ole Miss. I think that both of those teams, as I've said continuously, and we're never going to agree on this as we're coming to the close on the show here, they have been propped up because they're SEC teams, but they're not as good as they've been in the past.
I will agree offensively they're not, but you know what I've also seen my entire life? Saban have subpar offenses or below average offenses.
Fair.
And defensively they're good and nobody stops them. Because one thing that nobody predicted preseason was that front seven for Alabama would actually be worth a damn, and they are. Okay? What they're doing, Braswell, what those dudes are doing up front, Malachi Moore, Downs in the back end, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Arnold, if he comes back healthy to some extent, Joe, all around, they don't have a flaw defensively when it comes to personnel. There's not one guy who can go out there and attack. So when I look at it, I guess I'm looking at head coach, I'm looking at personnel. I know what I'm getting from them offensively, and quite honestly, I'm just saying I don't care because I know defensively they can clamp down on you. I just saw it twice in back-to-back weeks.
If they lose to LSU, I'm done talking about them.
All right, that's fine, and I will be too. But I don't think you can discount them the way that you do. All right.
Well, they'd be number 11. I don't think there's a discounting happening here. I'm not saying that they're unrankable. That's where the miscommunication is here. They're number 11. It's a perfect place to put them.
You've had him at number 11 for 3 weeks. At some point, you got to move him up. You can't just move people above them.
Yeah, I can.
All right, whatever. Episode 800 on AYS, my friend.
I saw that. Congrats.
Thanks. We will see y'all over there. We will see you guys again Wednesday. It's going to be another banger. We'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good night. Joe was amazing as always. Don't tell him I said it. Peace.